Texoma Exotics presents Not Another Reptile podcast.
The year.
The man, the myth.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're great. How are you, Mike?
Hanging in there.
Good.
Yeah, hanging in there. I got some big news going here at Mike's Monitors. Some, I don't know, really. I mean, in my field, it's huge. It's so. Is we just gonna start? Can I start babbling? Okay.
Yeah.
So I go way back in all of this shit, like way back since I was a little kid. And when I started becoming, late teens, early adults, I was breeding a lot of colubrids, North American desert rat snakes, and rainbow boas. I was vending at a local swap here in Illinois called Lee Watson's Reptile Swap, which is, it's legendary. I mean, before it was the Wild West, just put it that way. Before all this U.S. ARC and laws and stuff, I mean, there ain't nothing you couldn't find at Lee's. So, a lot of big guys, we all come up through there. So like Brian Barczyk was there and Mark Bell, Ken Masick, Willow Slew, just a lot of guys that are still Bob Ashley that are still prevalent in the game, but going back to when I started with monitors, I really didn't know anything about monitors. I just assumed, well, not assumed, but I knew of, your normal three. So your Savannah monitors, Nile monitors, and Asian water monitors, just commonly imported stuff. And I wasn't really, they didn't really do much for me, all those monitors. I was a snake guy. So at Lee Watson Swap one day, I was selling my litter of rainbow boas, and some guy kept asking me, would you like to trade for this peach throat monitor? Peach throat didn't even enter my mind. When he said monitor, I thought of those three. And I was like, nah, man, I'm good. I don't want no monitors, And so the day's going on. Now the guy comes back towards the end of the show, and he has it with him. And he goes, oh, you sure you don't want to trade for this peach throat? And he holds this peach throat monitor up, and I was blown away. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I mean, outside of my children, it took my breath away. It was beautiful.
That's cool.
So we made the trade, and then I slowly, well, not really slowly, it was pretty quick, probably a couple months, sold all my snakes off and started buying monitors. And I've been doing that, probably 30 plus years now. So
that's fun.
Yeah. So, and going back in those days, this was like, we had email, and we had that was the .com day. So kingsnake.com was like the meeting place. Right. So getting on a monitor forum at kingsnake.com, I met some great people like John Adragna and Mark Bayless. I mean, the list goes on and on. All the big names, and which none of us were big names back then. The monitor world was really in the United States was really, there wasn't a lot going on. Not a lot of people doing anything with them. So me and John became friends, and we did a lot of talking on the phone and through the kingsnake.com and emails. It's crazy because that's mainly what the connection was way back then, was emails. Now I never even open my emails. It's sad, but I just, I don't know. It's just, I fell out of it or something. Right. So, well, you know what? That and 90% of the stuff I get is all, junk mail and gun ads or whatever. It's waste of time. So me and John, we would always discuss books and stuff. And there's one book there was one picture of this one lizard. It was not even known really to science. I mean, of course, it was known to science, but there was none in captivity, nothing like that. Very, very rare animal. And I called up John. I said, "Oh, cuz, what's this? What is this?" And he goes, "Oh, hey, that's Varanus togianus." And it was one picture, and it was over 30 years ago. It was one picture of just the head, like from the neck to the tip of the nose. It was a solid black lizard with white rings around its nose. And it was, this thing was it. So what I really liked about it is when you get wild caught animals, they're way more defensive than captive born. They get real used to you quickly. But these wild caughts, when they threaten you, they puff their throat way down. They arch their neck and they puff their throat down. They make their head into this diamond shape. And that's what the photo was. And I just said, man, I would love that. Oh, you'll never see him, Mike. You'll never see him. I'm like, okay. So, 30 years go by, and John Adragna, he imported, I think he imported like, I don't know, 9. And 4 went this way and 3 went that way. So they were kind of spread out all over the country. When he first got him, he offered them to me. And, I've been doing a lot of work with my own animals, captive breeding and stuff. And I really didn't, as much as I wanted them, they were kind of expensive for wild caught animals. So I just figured, nah, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth that money, perhaps down the road a little bit. And they kind of left my mind, but that picture's always burnt in my brain. So, a few years go by and, actually 1 year went by. And I've already produced probably over 250 Mertens. So, in distributing throughout the country to people who want them and stuff. And I never turn my monitors off. I'm not sure if you guys understand like that. So, like, with snakes, you got a formula. You cool them down for so long, you slow down their feeding, you get their metabolism real low, and then you slowly bring them up and you feed them. Well, monitors, you can do that, and it does happen to a lot of species in the wild. Mm-hmm. But my thinking with them is their metabolism is just so high. They're full, high octane animals. They're very smart, very intelligent, and everything they do is like at high speed. So, of course, to breed everything, you gotta trick them into thinking they're going through a time of plenty. So when they have their eggs, their babies hatch, and there's plenty of food, and it's survival of the fittest. So that's their that's their life cycle. When the good times hit, they breed and they put out babies to continue on their species. So I just run my shit wide open all the time. 12 hours on, 12 hours off, light cycle, high heat all the time. And when I mean high heat, I'm saying their cool spots are 82 degrees. That's the coolest spots in my animal room. So they're cooking. When I open up my Mertens enclosure, the air in there hits you like a ton of bricks. It's got to be 85% humidity, and the ambient air temperature in my Mertens cage is 95 degrees. Plus, they have basking spots that are 150 degrees, and the females really need that to metabolize their calories into egg production. So, I don't want to keep babbling on.
No, that's pretty wild, though. Like you're teaching me how to take care of monitors.
Right. Well, you know what, man? I'm an open book. I'm not. I have nothing to hide. I don't care if somebody catches up to me, overtakes me, or if I'm not catching. You know what? It's not a competition for me. I want to see people succeed. So, in saying all this, when I say I really, really and truly, I'm an open book because I've always been this way since I was a little kid. I as much as I love my animals, and when I say animals, I'm talking birds, fish, everything but furries. I'm not a furry guy. I don't do rats and mice and gerbils. I could care less about that stuff. So I was always, even as a little kid, I come from a broken home. My mom and dad were divorced. They got back together and they got divorced again. But as a youngster, I don't know. I really enjoyed, like, even if it was a American toad that I caught in my backyard, I would put it into, a 10-gallon tank or whatever we had available back in those days, the 70s. And I'd set it up as nice as I could, and just make it look beautiful for the animal and for myself, because I really like observing animals in, a nice enclosure, naturalistic. And I say naturalistic because we're never going to, replicate the wild. So just in my own view of what I think they should be living in, I set it up like that. Of course, I don't have a marsh in a 10-gallon tank, but I do the best I can. So people would come to my house and they're like, man, that cage is beautiful. So it's like, ever since then, I didn't want just your lowest common denominator enclosure. I always deck shit out. I wanted to look good for the animals. I want to look good for myself and for people who come over too, because you draw them in, and when you draw people in, you have more peers, you have more people to talk to, and it doesn't help to get a pat on the back every now and then. I love it,
Yeah.
So, as I grew up and I advanced, I been through the whole shit. So I've seen when people, everything was in a fish tank with a screen top, and I'm guilty of it too, but that's all we had available to us from, way back then. But one time when I was a kid, I was riding my bicycle through the neighborhood, and it was around garbage day. And somebody had this big old, I don't know if you guys remember the 70s, those console TVs. It looks like a casket. They're huge. There's a phonograph in them.
Yeah.
So me and my buddies, we wrestled this thing home, bring it to my house. My mom and my grandma they were so hot. They're like, you'll never get that in the house. I said, come on, buddy, let's get it in. So we got it in. And then, my mom, I was in the basement all the time. I'm like a human radon experiment. I've lived in a basement most of my life.
That's great.
So, my grandma, my ma hear the bing, bang, boom, all this noise. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? I said, I'm making a cage, Ma, relax. So we'd kick the tube out and put plexiglass on the front, drill some air holes in there, set it up really nice, and put, like, I had a boa constrictor in that. And it was in my room, which my room is not your traditional bedroom. I mean, I had a bed, but it was also like a hangout area. So I had a bed. We played backgammon and chess, and, me and my buddies, we'd partake down there and have some fun. And Ma and Granny up there yelling at me. So, that's what it's always been like for me. So, so when I, in my older age, and, I was working, raising a family, I got 8 kids, and, I'm an empty nester now. I got Gigi here with me. She's my youngest daughter, but, she's here with me. And, so what the hell, man, where's I going with all that? So, okay. So yeah, I kind of, I was working, I'm a retired cement finisher. So I would work a lot of long, hard hours. Plus, I'd do my passion when I'd get home from work, a couple hours in the basement with the animals. And, so things all kind of advanced from there, which I guess just brings me to where I'm at nowadays. So yeah, I do a lot of custom work with Zoopoxy, making my enclosures, trying to deck them out, to the best of my ability, which I think look pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, they look nice. I seen a few of your a few of your posts with the water and all the stuff.
Yeah, it's a little over the top, man. But you know what? I can sit down there and watch my animals literally for days. And now that I'm retired, I do.
Right.
So I started having breeding success early on with the monitors, and then, like I said, through my working years, I had some animals, not a lot. I was breeding peach throats and tree monitors back then.
For like,
Pardon?
like what did back then? How much did monitors go for?
Oh man, nothing like today, that's for sure. So here's an example. I had gotten my very first green tree monitor was shortly after that trade at the Reptile swap I was telling you about. A guy, we're all peers, everybody knows each other, and he lived a few towns over. And now I'm starting to get into monitors, so I'm starting to talk with different people than snake people.
Uh-huh.
And this guy said to me, he goes, it was a winter time, and I was laid off from doing concrete in the city. And so I used to do anything to hustle up money. I had a lot of kids. I had to hustle. So
Yeah.
So I was selling tarantulas and my snakes at the swap. So this guy I know, he comes in and he's like, wow, that's a really nice Mexican red rump, Brachiopelma vagans, which is like, I mean, in the tarantula world. But then again, this goes way back. So, I mean, literally a Mexican red rump is like, it's like a fancy goldfish. I mean, they're just, you could get them anywhere. You know what I mean? They were really inexpensive. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Would you like to trade for the tree monitor? Because I'm cheap that way, man. I'd rather trade than spend money,
Okay.
It keeps my wife happy too. So she's like, spider gone, new lizard, no problem. We'll do it. So I go to this guy's house and I got a few spiders with me because I know this guy, what he's got down there. I had no idea he had this tree monitor. So he tells me, I show him the Mexican red rump and he's like, oh, that thing's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, it's a nice spider. And I'm like, okay. He takes the deli cup. I'm like, all right, where's the tree monitor? He goes, that 29-gallon fish tank over there. Again, a fish tank. 29-gallon fish tank with a lighted hood with the flip open, a fish tank, literally a fish tank. He goes, go over there and just open the thing and put your hand on the rim of the tank. So I open it up, put my hand on the rim of the tank. This beautiful, oh man, it was probably about 2.5 foot. This beautiful green tree monitor comes crawling up my arm, goes around my shoulder, and it just sits right here with his head right here. And I'm like, he's like, oh, would you like to do the trade? I'm like, yeah, I would definitely like to do the trade. So, again, this is really unheard of. So when we were talking about the green tree monitor, he told me he had got it when it was like 8 inches, the size of an anole, which back then you never, wild caughts would come in. They were adults and they were real skinny and in bad shape. You had to do a lot to, establish them. You had to flagell, panicure them, praziquantel, whatever you had to do to eliminate their parasite load and then rehydrate them, of course. This thing was a Cadillac right out of that fish tank. So we did the trade and that was it. Once I got that green tree monitor, like I said, that's all I do. But so back then, a green tree monitor, like what we would call long-term captive, which, that's a lie. Everybody, yeah, I've had it. Okay, what's long-term? Somebody says, well, I had it like 8-9 months. It's like, that's not long-term. I mean, it's animal. It's an adult and it's lived in the jungle its whole life. So, and especially if you don't know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, you can get them in good shape in a, less than a year. But so those animals, like right off an importer's list, were between like $200 and $400, depending on, the species. And so that's tree monitors. That's green trees and black trees. And now the price you pay on that stuff is crazy. But thank God there's a lot of captive breeding going on with the tree monitors. So, anybody who buys a wild caught one is just a straight up, is not a smart person.
Right.
Well, I love your green treed pythons. I love it when you show them in your lives, get to see them.
Yeah.
And what is it like having one of those?
Well, so that's an animal that I've wanted my whole life. And I've always heard, which is something I've learned to do in my old age. I don't listen to other people because I have my own experiences, my own methods and techniques of doing things. And so I always wanted one, but but back then there wasn't a lot of captive born. They were mostly wild caughts. And then you hear the horror stories, there'd dehydrate, the whole thing, parasites. So now it's a lot different. I'd take just about any wild caught animal and I can nurture it back to health. My daughter's a vet tech, so I have access to, veterinarian care and medicines, and I do a lot myself. And what I can't do myself, me and my daughter go to the doctor that she works for, and we brainstorm, because he's like a dog and a cat guy. But with the three of us, our three put our brains together. I got, like I say, a lot of years experience with wild caught animals. I know what to do, and he's the doctor, so he can prescribe the medicine in correct dosages and whatnot. So and so then I got again, I'm having a lot of success with my monitors. I don't like to spend money. My wife doesn't have a problem with anything I do, as long as I'm making money for her. And if I do some trading with my animals, and I donate a lot of animals to USARK Florida. I donate them to the Reptile Youth Alliance.
That's cool.
Just so many things. Again, it's not really about money for me. I want to see people, get into this and be very passionate and love their animals and want to do what's best for them. So now that we were all over the board, I'm going to go back to the one thing. So in my young days, coming up with my naturalistic enclosures, it was really sad because in the United States here, people never wanted to advance. They would look at my cages and they'd be like, oh, that's all unnecessary. I'm like, you're probably right. Maybe it is unnecessary, but I like to look at it. My animals seem to be very happy like this. Instead of in a tank with the screen top with one light burning over a little water dish. I mean, basically, if you go look at a beef jerky machine at Walmart, that's what it is. It's just a light bulb over a box that dries it out. Well, that's what you're doing to your animals. Yeah. So, those early days, that was like a beef jerky machine people were using, and I kind of blew past that. And then when the internet came around, you started really seeing people from Europe. I mean, man, those guys, they would do setups so nice, planted live plants, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And so I was automatically drawn to the European style of husbandry. Right. And, and what's the point to that whole story is it's really, really nice to see people in the U.S. now coming around to that way of keeping their animals, and it kind of goes like this. So, it's like less animals in better enclosures and more for like exhibiting, viewing and that kind of thing. I mean, I see all your racks back there. I don't have a problem with racks. There's certain animals that, ball pythons, they thrive in those racks, and it's perfectly fine. The only problem for me with those racks is I can't see the animal, and I love to see the animals. I'd like to see them crawling and checking something out, going under a hut, coming out the other side. So that's the only thing I like that about racks that, and definitely racks don't work for monitor lizards. So I ain't having any of those.
That's why I'm down here. I'm down here so much, and I keep opening up my racks and everything and taking out taking out the snakes.
Yeah.
Do you sell your racks?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Racks?
No, your enclosures.
Oh no, my enclosures. You know what? I get asked this all the time, and it's a passion of love for me. So, my grandmother was an artist. I think of myself as kind of an artist when it comes to, enclosure building and habitat design. So it's because I look at it from an artistic point of view, it's all subjective. So, what I build, someone might say, dude, that looks like shit. And that I understand. Everybody has a different eye for art. So I tell people all the time, if you can see, like people say, hey, I'd like you to build something like that. I'm like, I don't really have the time. I said, but do you have an idea what you want? And they're like, well, yeah, I want this rock waterfall over here and this branch that comes across here. And I'm like, okay, wait, I said, close your eyes. He said, okay. He's got his eyes closed, and I'm doing all this while his eyes are closed. No, I'm only joking. I say, do you see it, man? Do you see it, man? And he's like, yeah, I could see the water trickling down the rocks and the branch over the top. I'm like, dude, if you can see it in your mind, put it together. If you can see it, you can build it. Just do it. That's what I think a lot of people, they're afraid to, I don't know, they're maybe not, maybe fail's not the right word, but they're afraid to whatever, get it going. And once you start it, and you start seeing, wow, you know, you'll make that little pile of rocks, and you'll be like, wow, man, too bad I put that red one down on the bottom. I wish that red one, take it apart, redo it. It's all trial and error, and it's all art. So it's what looks good to you. That's all that matters. And if the animals enjoy it and they're safe,
Right.
that's good. And as far as you asked if I sell caging, I don't, but I would help anybody. You know, I would guide them to anything they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome that you get that kind of support from, you know,
Yeah.
your breeders. So
And having that is because I mean the stories that you hear from back when how far you've been, there was cutthroat back then. No one liked to talk to people. They didn't want to tell you what you were working on.
Yep.
All that stuff. I mean, and you grow. I mean, and you just because you said that you evolved.
Yeah, you gotta. I get asked a lot. You know, who are your mentors in this shit? And man, I really, like you said, man, back then, dude, this was cutthroat. Nobody wanted to see you do better than them, and I just never been that way. I don't care. You know, I want to see everybody happy and succeed. Most of all, I want to see your animals happy. So if there's something I can lend to make your animals happy, and you don't like me personally, I don't care, man. I got 8 kids and a wife. I got all the love and support. I don't need it from outside of my household.
Right. That's really awesome.
You know, in the same breath, I like you said, there was a lot of secret keepers back then. And when I came onto the scene, there was one secret keeper in the monitor world who's, he back then he was the big dog, and he was a dick. He's a big dick, and he's still around today, and he's still a big dick, and I don't give a shit. So he would hide all his secrets. He would never, give up. And it only took me a few times to realize this guy's a dick. I don't need to ask him no questions. I'm not getting nothing out of him anyways.
Right.
So I just started learning on my own, doing research on my own, reading a lot of books about monitors and climate and the areas they came from. So yeah, I learned it a lot on my own. And even back then, when I started doing real good with the tree monitors and the peach throats, I've had people could say, dude, why are you telling everybody? And it's like, I don't give a shit. Why wouldn't I want someone else to be successful? It's just crazy to me that people like, I'm not a brain surgeon, dude. I'm a retired cement finisher who breeds monitor lizards. I'm not changing the world, man. You know what I'm saying? I do what I do, and that's that. So I've always been an open book with this stuff. And, in my older age now, I've told a lot of people step by step everything I do. And, you got to realize that, like, I'm from southeast Wisconsin. We have a particular climate here, and I've been here my whole life. I moved to Florida for a short time, which sucked, but I'm here, and I know my weather patterns here. I know how my basement works, the temperatures, how it gets hot and cold. And don't kid yourself, monitor lizards, even though they're in an 82-degree room, they're not dumb. When you put them in your basement, you put them in a nice setup, and the winter comes, and of course, all my walls are insulated. But if they weren't insulated and your room was still 82 degrees and there was a 60-degree wall behind them, they would know how the base temperatures are. They're not dumb animals. They're very highly intelligent, and they're totally in tune to nature. So, and all animals are. So, but monitor lizards are they're a touch higher on the intelligence level than most reptiles.
Yeah.
So, you gotta think like a lizard, really, and be a little smart and understand these base temperatures and all this stuff that people kind of overlook. So, like when people, they'll ask me back in the day, they would ask me, hey, what temperature do you keep your tree monitors at? And I'd tell them, and then they'd, contact me back and they'd say, oh, it ain't working. I'm like, well, where do you live, dude? Well, I live in South Texas. I'm like, yeah, I probably think you're in a little different, so regionally, like if I was to pick up and move to California, man, everything I do here would go out the window and I'd have to redo and adapt to that environmental, those conditions and those seasonal changes and stuff. So I'm very in tune with the Midwest with my animals, which is, kind of, I would say is a big part of my success is, overcoming all of my regionally weather patterns and daylight patterns and, barometric pressures. This is all shit. These animals know.
Yeah.
They don't need to read a barometer to know if it's a high pressure front coming in or if the high pressure front is gone. They know long before we know. So you just got to kind of take all that stuff into consideration. And another thing with monitor lizards, and a lot of people think I'm full of shit, but most of these people, they're not successful. Every day I change waters because they poop in their waters. A lot of them poop in their waters. Not all, lots of them do. So like your water monitors, your forest monitors, things like that, they poop in their water. So you need to clean their water basins every day. And I feed every day. I'm down there every day. So when I open a cage and I feel the air is a little dry, I know I got to spray it down a little bit. It's just all being in tune with it. And like I said, I could turn the tap water on and put my finger under it, and I could tell you when it's 74 degrees. And my kids even tell me, you don't know that, Dad. I'm like, watch this. 78 degrees, kid. And he'd shoot it with the temp gun. 78.8, whatever. I'm close,
Right.
But yeah, so that's all part of it. And yeah, that's
So, what is the brightest monitor that you breed?
the what?
The brightest monitor that you breed color wise?
Oh, the Varanus. Now, if you ask me, out of all the monitor species in the whole wide world, nothing beats Varanus coming eye, which is a Philippines golden-headed monitor, and specifically Varanus coming eye from Mindanao in the Philippines. They're stunning. They're highlighter yellow and they're jet black. There's a few other locales that kind of their backs wash out to a white color and their heads turn to a white color. And I never really liked them. I mean, I like the species. I don't like the color, but yeah, there's nothing beats a good Mindanao coming eye. Nothing.
Do you breed those?
Yes, I do.
See there? Wow.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much stuff that we still have to see that we don't get to see on the Instagram lives. I
So
love
how many species do you breed?
Currently I have Mertens, I have Coming Eye, I have Similis. Oh man, what else do I got? I got Sulfurs, which is Varanus bivitatis. It's a giant lizard. And I'm just started working with those that dream species of mine, Varanus togianus, which we were talking about earlier, the black ones with the white rings around their nose. Well, their throat and their chest has white zebra striping on it, and they only get 4 foot. They're beautiful, beautiful monitors. The wild caughts can be quite a handful, and so they've never been bred in captivity. We'll go this route. They've never been bred in captivity. I recently picked up a group. I traded off my original 3 breeder Mertens. They were getting along in a year. My F1s that I was holding back were coming up. So I wanted to get rid of my adults that I bred the shit out of and give my F1s, into the breeding enclosure and start breeding F1s. So, I traded my original trio of Mertens monitors for what I was told was 1.2, a male and 2 female Varanus Togianus, the ones we were talking about earlier that were imported.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my friend Steve Sandin, he got 1.2. So we were talking on the phone one day, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the Togis." That's what I said. Like, they slipped my mind. I wanted them, but once I change my mind, I'm done. So, but again, they're always in the back of my head, that photo. So he goes, "Yeah, I got these." We were talking about the Mertens, and I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm getting ready to retire these guys. I got my F1s coming up." And he goes, "Yeah, I got these Togis." I'm like, "You got those Togis?" He goes, "Yeah, I got the Togianus." I'm like, "Would you like?" Because I know he loves Mertens too. I'm like, "Would you like to trade?" So he said, "Yeah, he wanted to trade." He's in Colorado. He came down for a Tinley show, came to my house, delivered them, and then we spent the weekend at Tinley, me and him, and just fucking around and having a good time. Tinley's a blast. So 3 days now. I don't know. Maybe if you could kind of sense my passion. So I'm at Tinley, and I'm trying to sell lizards. I got my booth set up, and the back of my mind, my God, I got Togis at home. I got Togis at home. So when we made this trade, I had about 2 weeks before he was coming here, and I've designed over the years. I've developed this caging system. I call it Mike's Monitors Socialization Caging System,
Yep.
and it all came about kind of like out of necessity and a different purpose. It was designed for a different purpose than how it actually turned out, which is a beautiful thing. And I can only thank God. I can only thank God for, putting these ideas in my head and making me work on them. And then to see them, this is crazy. And to see them all come to fruition, it's crazy. I'm going to lead this down another road. So I've developed this cage. I took, I was breeding the shit out of Mertens. I had lots and lots of babies, and that's a lot of work keeping babies clean and healthy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm thinking I'm gonna make a cage for them. I took an Exoterra 40 breeder, and I got a hole saw glass diamond bit, and I cut a hole in the bottom of the glass tank, and I put a bulkhead fitting and a valve on it, and I put about an inch and a half of water in there, and then one cork tube that went from side to side with one heat lamp over the top, and it covered the screen top, so it wasn't a beef jerky machine. And so I got maybe 25, 30 per enclosure, and then I have a few in a different type of cage system, caging. I shouldn't say system; it's just regular caging. And the ones in the water bottom enclosure, literally in 2 or 3 weeks' time, I couldn't open the door without them all. It was like the Oompa Loompas. They would bum rush me. And it's like, I'm like, man, these things fucking love me, man. Why do they love me? So what it is like I said, that cage system was designed for ease of maintenance in mind. And in actuality, it is very easy to maintain, simple and inexpensive. Anybody can do it. If I could drill a hole in glass, Holly, you can. Anybody can. It's not a hard thing to do. And again, like I said, the hardest part is just to do it. Just do it. And it's once you start it, you'll be on a roll, and you'll be glad you did. So I started thinking, what's the difference between these ones here that kind of hide when I open a cage and these ones here who are waiting to come to me? I'm like, well, so the original cage that I was raising my babies up was one of my typical cages. Beautiful plants and branches and hides everywhere and deep soil. Just beautiful. Mm-hmm. So beautiful. They would go in there and they'd hide. They'd feel totally safe. And it took a long time to socialize those animals. Well, these animals in my socialization caging system, they have one place to hide in the cork tube, which has 2-inch holes drilled all in it. It looks like Swiss cheese, but they feel very comfortable hiding in there, even though they could be seen from across the room. They felt secure, and they're number one. So your monitors, like your water monitors, Mertens monitors, forest types like Jobiensis, Indicus, riverine type animals like again Jobiensis, Indicus. They when they first hatch, they're food for everything. They're on the menu for everything. So they don't like to be approached from above. So a front opening cage is really settles them in. And they're always near a water source, whether they're basking on a branch over a creek or a river. And if something comes, if they see a shadow of a bird or anything climbing up on that branch, they jump right in the water, and they always feel totally secure. So I was like, well, this makes a lot of sense. This why this caging system is working and making them way more comfortable than the other ones. So I did, and I actually have a socialization caging system for drier species of animals, which we'll get into at another time. But so when people buy any of my water monitors, be it the Coming Eye, the Sulfurs, or Mertens, I before we even when we make a deal, the next thing I say is, hey, I want you to look at this. And it's on my webpage. You can go check my webpage out, my socialization caging system. So I tell people what it is and how it works. And I love it. So like Shauna Kana just won a Mertens from Chris Eaton's podcast. She followed my instructions to the T. She's got a Mertens monitor that's eating out of her fingertips, and it's beautiful and it's healthy. And the socialization caging system is meant only till the animal outgrows that enclosure. By the time it outgrows that, even before it outgrows it, but by the time it outgrows that enclosure, you could put it in one of these really beautiful naturalistic setups, and I guarantee you, when you walk in the room, he's not going to go hide under the water dish. He's not going to go hide in a branch. He's going to come right to the front and be like, hey, food monkey, you got any food for me? What's up? We're going to play today? What are we doing? So this socialization caging system works really well. So with the Togies, I had a couple of weeks before he was coming to drop him off. And, man, I'm getting old, but, man, when I want something, I fucking hustle my ass off. So I'm like, you know what? I wonder if this socialization caging system would work on these Togies, because the reason Steve wanted to get rid of them, he said he turned the door handle to get into his animal room. Just turning the door handle, he could hear them going boom, 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 boom. They're really scared and nervous.
Yeah. So
I made my socialization caging system, but on a larger scale. So I have 3 70-gallon tubs, and the enclosure itself is so it's 4 by 4 by 3 feet deep, and all water on the bottom. Very not complex hides and stuff. You know what I mean? So they can't get deeply hidden. And these are bigger animals too. So I got them last October, and I just posted an Instagram thing. I don't know if you guys seen it, of that Varanus Togianus coming up on my arm.
I think I've seen it. Yeah.
When Steve seen that, he goes, I don't fucking believe it, man. Those things were bouncing off the wall. And so that trio turned out to be 2 boys and 1 girl. So now I wish I had more females. So I got a hold of Chris Murray, a guy in Alabama, I believe. Yeah, Alabama. And he had, I think he had 4. So he had 4 of them. And we were just chit-chatting one day, and he goes, you like them things? I said, yeah, man, I love them. What do you got? If you got any females, let's make a trade. So we made a trade. I got 2 more females from him, bring my group up to 2.3. And, man, these are wild-caught animals are a lot different than captive-born animals, which their attitudes. So wild-caughts they're wild. They're, they know the struggle. Where captive borns, I mean, it's like Americans compared to, Ukrainians who eat potatoes and shit. We eat whatever we want, right? So you kind of compare it like that. So so I got those, and at first I had to house them all individually because if I put this one with that one, these two were fighting, that one was left out, and it took a couple of months to iron out this pecking order and get 2.2 established and a lone female separate. And
Right.
so far so good. And so that would be my original trio. The biggest male I have is separate with one of the smallest females from that group. So I got those other two females. So the medium-sized one I got in the original trio, I got him in the middle enclosure, and he's flanked by two females. And I have pass-throughs that I could open and close the gates for them to breed.
Yeah.
So once I had them all, I had those two paired up. I went down there one day, and man, oh dude, my heart stopped. These have never been bred in captivity. People don't really know a whole lot about them. I got them to where they're getting nice and calm. I look in the water one day and I see the tails up. I'm like, holy shit. And I of course, I got to break out the video and world's first breeding. I was so blown away by it. So those two, they hooked up and they were locked up. And so I had sold a pair of giant sulfurs that I had. I had like 5 sulfurs at one time. I only have a pair now, but these two that I sold, the male was 7 foot and the female was over 6.5. They were huge,
Wow.
huge beasts. And they weren't friendly like Bumblebee and Kingpin. Bumblebee and Kingpin will crawl right around anybody. They love people.
Right.
So when I moved those out, I put Bumblebee and Kingpin into my big walk-in enclosure, and I had a really nice breeding 8-foot enclosure, deep substrate. It's the substrate bin is 5 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 2 feet deep, all substrate. So and one end is heated, so that's where they nest. They feel that heat, and they put them where they put their eggs where, about 85 degrees. So I took that breeding pair of Togianus and I put them into this beautiful one of my decked out enclosures. So I was all happy. I came down the next night to check on everybody before bed, like I always do, and they're locked up into the water dish. Everything's cool. So I come back down the next morning. They were separate, and I couldn't see the female anywhere. And I'm looking for my male. Now, this is one of my males he loves me. He'll come out on my arm. I'd see him poking his head over a log. He wouldn't even show me himself. So I was like, man, this ain't going to be easy. Watch, how am I going to keep track of them breeding and everything in this enclosure? So needless to say, a few things happened, and I switched them back. So my female is gravid, so I was waiting for her to nest. She started test nest digging spots all around, looking for the right humidity and temperature. So everything was cool. Still didn't see him much. I was used to playing with him every day. Still don't see him much. I'm more worried about getting eggs than playing with him. And the female, she goes and nests. She starts a deep hole. And in an area like that, that's a lot of dirt for an old man to move. My kids always help me, but.
So how many eggs do they have in a clutch?
Well, nobody knows with Varanus Togianus, but like my sulfurs, for example, I think the biggest clutch I've gotten is 15 or 16. Mertens are 17 eggs. Coming Eye are between 12 and 15 eggs.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. And they're big eggs too. They're not little jujubes. They're big ones.
Do you take them out and put them in incubators, or you keep them there?
No, I take them out and put them in the incubator because monitor eggs incubate over, depending on the species. Like my Mertens, the longest eggs I've had go was 192 days.
Wow. And
like the shortest I've had them go is like 240. So that's a long time. And your cages, while they're, even like my cages, while they're very good and they dry out. I've got to always maintain a humidity level, a moisture level in the dirt, and you can't do that. The eggs won't last. They need stability. So an incubator is the way to go.
So the question is, do you set it to a certain degree to get females or a certain degree to get males?
I do a lot of experimenting and stuff. I have not found, that it matters either way. I incubated at 85 degrees. A lot of people go 87 degrees. Some people go 83 degrees. I've always done 85 degrees. So that's steady. You might have to wait a little longer, but you don't get none of the complications, kinks in the tails, nothing like that at 85. Some people that go 87, 88, sometimes you get some, kinking and foot twisted, and it's all because it's happening too fast at that temperature.
All right.
So if you slow it down a little bit, you got to wait a little bit longer, but your shit is better.
Mm-hmm.
I know this question is way off the topic, but is there any plants that's toxic to them?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there are, but I'm a plant killer, so I always use fake plants.
Okay.
And since like the early 90s, when I don't know who invented this shit, but I remember back when when you're a kid, you got the little plastic plant from the fish tank store, and I used to get the big ones and hang them around and do the best I could with what we had available to us. Then there's a store like Hobby Lobby, and I go in there and they got fucking plants that if it wasn't in the Hobby Lobby and it was in your front room, you'd think it was real. They're beautiful. They're perfect. And so that's why I like them too. I don't have to water them. I don't have to. And monitors tear that shit up, unless you got like an atrium type room where there's a lot of space and you could have larger plants. So, but generally monitors, when they'll dig at the base of trees and stuff. So they're getting down in the roots, and before you know it, they kill everything. So big plants is the way to go with monitors.
That's good to know. I did not know that.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So the Toji, she went down, and I thought for sure she was nesting. So everything was good. And then my male, the next day, I see my male snooping around on the dirt, and he finds her burrow, and he's frantically digging in there. So I'm like, oh shit. There's only two things that are happening. Either she's still in a cycle and throwing pheromones, and he wants to breed, or she's laying a clutch and he wants to eat her eggs, I didn't think that, because they're well fed. They don't scavenge for food. They just kind of sit around and look for me to walk past with my little bucket, and then they know they're going to get fed. But so I dug him up, and these females, especially wild caughts, they're not dumb, man. They'll dig a burrow. They'll go find their beautiful spot where they want to lay their eggs. Then they'll backtrack, and they'll dig a burrow over this way. And they'll dig one this way, and they'll dig this one. And those are all like moot burrows. So they're distractions. So they go look this way, they go look that way. And in the meantime, the eggs are over here, well hidden. So all of a sudden, my male, he got into the dirt and he was gone. I'm like, oh, fuck, I got to dig his ass out. So me and my daughter, Gigi, we start digging him out. And they're mean, man. Togianus are fucking mean. So I pulled him out, and I wouldn't put him back in the socialization cage. Waited the next day to see if the female came up and laid a clutch. So she didn't come up the next day. I'm like, you know what? I it's killing me. I got to find her. So me and Gigi, we dug. We found her. And when we found her, I seen she was still plump. She did not lay her eggs. So I went and put her back into the socialization cage opposite where the male was. So then I go back to the 8-foot cage, and I got to redo the dirt and, get it all set back up the way I had it. And then I go back in the other room to retrieve them, and I forgot to put the gate in. So the male's on top of the female. He's breeding her again. That's what he wanted. He could still smell her throwing pheromones, so he just wanted to breed. So after that whole digging thing, I said to myself, I'm like, you know what? they're doing great in the socialization cage. They're breeding in the socialization cage. The only thing I don't have in my socialization cage is nesting for the female.
Mm.
So, I come up with a nest box. And so now they're separate. I'm waiting on her to nest. And the largest female I have, who she would get beat up by every one of these Togies. But now she's getting big and she's getting plump. She's beautiful. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. So I open the gate. Male goes in there, and I'm like, oh, shit. I'm ready with my gloves to separate them. And because they're vicious, man. And my male, as soon as he got into her cage, he just started real short tongue flicks and just like every freaking inch of the cork bark, every inch he's sniffing. And I know what that means. He's smelling her pheromones.
Yeah.
And until he gets a visual cue, he's looking for that girl and he's smelling and he's loving it. And so he's looking all over the cage. He comes down the log and he gets over the water. He looks down in the water. He sees that female in the water. Pew! He does a head dive into the water, and now I'm waiting. I'm like, oh shit, please don't kill her. Don't kill her. And as soon as you see this with monitor lizards, you know you're in. So he started doing this with his head. It's these real herky jerky movements, right? And then he starts chin rubbing the back of her neck, and they locked up. They've been locked up for 3 days now. So I got 2 possible chances at world first Togianus breeding here.
That's cool. That's cool. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I
hope I didn't bore you with all of that story, but
no, that's how amazing is that though? That was like when you seen that one picture, and it turns into that. Now you're having your own dream.
Oh yeah, exactly. So that again, I'm a strong Christian, and I can only throw my hands up and thank the Lord for blessing me the way He does. And I come from a pretty rough background. A lot of problems in my life, and so next year Easter, I'm 9 years clean and sober. So I shouldn't say sober because I don't drink, so I'm clean. So awesome. In the last 9 years, man, the Lord has taken me to places I never. I've always would love to have been, but man, doing what I was doing, there's no way I could ever be where I'm at today. So all my praise goes to the Lord, man.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Next month, I'll be 8 years sober.
Awesome, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Isn't it a great way of life? I mean, you remember shit. You're not chasing nothing.
Yep. Yeah, and then you see people that are nursing hangovers and everything, going, oh, I shouldn't have drank that, and I'm just like,
yeah. It's crazy, man, because I really and truly, and it doesn't have to be just drugs or alcohol addiction. It could be any kind of people in this day and age. People, and I never dealt with this when we were kids. It's like, and I don't mean to say this. I don't mean to sound insensitive or wrong, but back in my day, if you said, "Oh, I got anxiety," my friends would have said, "Anxiety? What are you, a pussy?" And so you just didn't let no one know that. Where in this day and age, it's like people like throw that around like it's a badge of honor. Oh, I'm depressed. I got anxiety.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I gotta watch out for your trigger. Come on.
Yeah. So, but when I do hear people like this. As a Christian, I'm supposed to evangelize to people, and I do my best. And I'm not really, I don't push, my relationship with the Lord on them. And I'm not a religious guy. I have a personal relationship with Jesus. So that's as far as I take it. And I tell people, I'm like, hey, man, listen to this story. And I tell them what I was all about and where I'm at. And, people are like, really? I'm like, yeah, really, man. You should just give it a try, put all that shit at the foot of the cross. And it worked for me. And so I got a few people in the last 9 years or so that kind of, I evangelized to. I don't even really, I'm not an eloquent speaker kind of guy. I'm a retired cement finisher. So I just tell them my experience and, Bible scripture and things that help. And it's a lot of people have turned around, and that's, to me, that's so rewarding, you know.
It is, and God bless you for doing that, because
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people in the industry that sticks their neck out like that. And I'm absolutely the same way. I lost my son almost 10 years ago.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
It is, and Paul knows, like an everyday battle for me.
Yep.
And I do too. When I hear people say, "Oh, I'm so depressed," and I'm like, "Okay, just don't give up. Just keep fighting."
That's it. You know, we have something in common, Holly. I lost my son, Michael Jr. He was my firstborn son. I lost him to addiction probably, well, it was 4 years ago. So,
Yeah.
man, I love my firstborn son. I have five. I have 3 boys and 5 girls, and so I have 2 sons left. And man, it's something that parents should never have to go through. It's hard, but
it is. And he was my only son, and he was my firstborn. So,
wow.
and I was very young too. So,
yeah.
But anyway, you know, God's
I'm sorry to hear that.
And you know, the whole reptile industry and everybody, you know, all the talk about everything about the money aspect of it. And I know it's a big deal. I know how much we've spent on our animals, but it's still a passion, like you said. And I know Chris hates that word. I don't give a shit. It is a passion.
Chris hates a lot of things.
I know it.
He's very grumpy. He's a very, very grumpy
But you know what? That's what I love about that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Same. You know, everybody's like, almost every day I get somebody's like, "Why are you friends with him?" I'm like, "Why are you not friends with him?" He's just like you know.
Well, he's genuine, man. I mean,
he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
I could be a little abrasive at times. That's probably why I get along with him so much. But hey, man, I come from a time when your feelings didn't matter. Nowadays, you got to watch who you offend and who, get out of here with that bullshit. If you ask me, I mean, but I'm not going to treat you bad. You know what I mean? I'm not prejudiced. I don't hate any group of people, unless you come around the kids. Then I got a problem with that. And anybody who's a human should have a problem with weird shit happening around kids, whether it's drugs or sexuality or abusiveness, any of that stuff. Keep it away from the kids. Do whatever the fuck you want. Just keep it away from the kids, especially my kids.
Yep. Absolutely. Kids and grandkids.
Yep.
But, this will be my first year going to Tinley. So
you're coming to Tinley in October?
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Oh, I can't wait to get a picture with you guys. It's going to be great.
It is. I'm so excited. I really am.
I can't wait.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we'll have to bug him. We'll have to bug him, Paul.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys. Hey, man, you know what? My wife tells me all the time, "Well, you talk to that guy for so long. You got to sell lizards." I'm like, I'm not here to sell lizards, Karen. She, like I said, I don't care about money. Never have. As a kid growing up, I don't give a shit. Either I have it or I don't have it. I don't dwell on having it or not having it. So, what I do love is I like people. I like talking with people and about this stuff and other things, salvation and, how to overcome things and, beautiful cage designs and breeding animals. And like you said, Holly, in this shit we're in, this science-filled thing that we're in, ain't nobody want to hear Mike Stefani saying he's a Christian. You know what? I don't care, man. Then don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Because if you came to me and said, I identify as a porcupine, I'm like, cool, Pinchy. We want to give me a hug, I mean, I don't care. Don't put nothing on me. I will never put nothing on you. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I know a lot of things that I see and hear on podcasts about when people start going down the religious rabbit hole and they're like, "Oh, I wish that guy would have said." Don't listen, man. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Don't listen, especially in this science-filled world that we're in. There's not a lot of people who think like that.
No.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of Karens who do now. I'm not taking your wife's name in the field,
She hates it.
but there is a lot of those out there that get very offended over everything.
Oh
There's
yeah, every little
there
thing.
that get offended that I'm friends with cops or security officers or whatever, and I'm like, you do you, boo. You let me worry about me. I'm a grown woman.
Right.
I'm gonna love my God. I'm gonna love my husband and my family, and that's just the way it is.
That's it. That's
Amen.
it. And I feel too that hearing that from you, Holly, and your story, um, maybe sometimes people won't speak up. They don't, because of this shit we're in, the science-filled thing that we're in. And when they hear me and they hear Cusco and other people, praising Jesus, I mean, maybe they'll come out of their shell and get a little more bold, because I'm telling you something right now, the way the world, and I'm not saying only our country, the way the whole world is going, man, it's not going to be blacks against whites, Hispanics, gays against good or whatever. It's good and evil, man. If you can't see that in this world, and it's a shame. It's a shame that you can't support somebody's different lifestyle. But as you can see over the last few years, you go from an acceptable lifestyle to drag queens reading stories in libraries to little kids.
Mhm.
And you know what? And here's the thing too. If it was a drag queen that came in there and sat down like a proper woman and read the book, I would not have a problem with that. But when you come in and you look like a linebacker, you got a beard like me, and you're in a fucking jock strap and you're reading about Billy's butt buddy or whatever to a kid, that's a problem, man. And my God don't like that. And I'm not going to stand by and watch that. I don't have a problem. Whatever you do in private. I don't have a problem with any of it.
I don't
Stay away,
judge. I
stay
don't
away
judge.
from the kids, man.
I do not judge, and I do not want to be judged.
Nope.
And that's why I'm friends with whoever. It doesn't matter. I'll be friends with Paul. He's like my brother from another mother. Although he's a damn Yankee.
Oh, yeah? Where are you from, Paul?
New York, Long Island.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you're a Texan, right?
Yes.
And I'm right in between you guys.
There we go.
Wow.
Yep.
So
That's funny.
yeah. Well, guys, we're over an hour here. Mike, I really do appreciate you coming on. And if you want to wait backstage, we'll be right there with you. And we'll talk a little bit more.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast, Holly. And nice meeting you, Paul. And one more thing. Hashtag pay Hottie. Do it.
Chris is going to have my butt for that.
Okay, well, good.
Oh, that's great. I just love Mike. I'm telling you, he's such a good guy.
Oh man, he's so good. I'm glad that he came on and man has such a wealth of knowledge about monitors.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about him, honestly, and I am still really interested in learning more.
Yeah.
They're
all good looking. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And green trees I've been interested in, but I've been looking for another big snake.
I can't wait till his eggs hatch. That's what I'm like. I got excited. I got excited about that story. It's unbelievable. So
and the absolutely the whole green tree python, they are so beautiful, and I believe it's his male that's the no pattern. So he's just so pretty. I love them all. So anyway, Paul, good chatting with you too, sir.
Thank you.
Till next week.
Thank you very much. Yep.
How many eggs do you have in the incubator now?
Who?
You.
I got seven in one clutch, and I only got one left from the other clutch.
Who else is in here? I know he's gonna have my ass in here in a minute, y'all. All right, everybody. Thank you for stopping in. Leave us a comment. Don't forget we are doing the 1,000 subscribers for YouTube. Yep. We're up to almost 200, so we really need to get our numbers up.
Let's go, people.
It's for a logo package that's valued, I believe, around $250 from Sinking Pencil, which has done my logo, Paul's logo, Kevin's logo that
Yep.
Paul's wearing his shirt. He actually just had it redone. So please subscribe, y'all. Thank you so much.
Take
All
it.
fees.